Hey guys, how you doing? Ron Zanut here. Well, today I've got a new video for you. It's the next in the build log of the Uncanny X-Men customer build. Now the case arrived, and as you can see, it's a Case Labs SM8 case, and it looks pretty awesome. I'm going to take you through it. The customer chose a customized version of the case for him, and first thing you see that the case color is a gunmetal gray. And then you see, obviously, on that front I/O, it has got a burnt red textured paint with it. So the case combination colors here are gunmetal gray and burnt red. Now, at the top of the case here, we have a thicker than usual top. So that top has a 38 millimeter top, I believe, or 31 millimeter top, vented, so that you can mount a radiator or fans into the top of the case, and gives you more space for your motherboard. So I'm going to go ahead and take you around and have a look at it. Try not to get in the picture too much. Alright, so this is the 31 millimeter top right up here. And all gunmetal gray, full vents here, burnt red with the I/O. It's got the power switch, reset switch, and 4 USB 2.0 along with microphone and headphone. We'll take you to this side here. First, he did get the optional casters, which I love. It makes it easy for me to build, and actually when I'm building and videoing to show you guys. Then if you take a look on the inside here on the cable management side, you'll see the red on all of the interior mounting points for the motherboard tray and where you would mount radiator. And on this side, you see you have your place for mounting your hard drives and SSDs. So, so that looks really good already. You can see how good it looks. And then those of you who are saying, hey, wait a minute, you opened the left side, aren't you supposed to see the motherboard there? Well, he has a reverse layout option that he selected for the case. So that means the motherboard is going to be on the other side. Things will be oriented a little bit differently. Here we have the motherboard tray here, and you can see that's all in the burnt red. And then you have power supply options here, one at the bottom or at the top. Optional mount for a fan. And then you have the honeycomb here over the top of the graphics cards. And it has an XL window. And when we open this up, we can see all of the inside of the case. Now, you can see the motherboard tray, which is removable in Case Labs cases. I won't do that right now, but it does slide out. And it comes with all the options to and standoffs to mount your motherboard. You have all these pass-throughs, these nice solid grommets. And there's also some pass-throughs here that are currently capped. There is a power supply support bracket that's right here. It's currently installed here as the way it came from the factory, but we can move it up here. And then on the front of the case, and if you can see, he's got a 360, up to a 360 radiator mount set up. So you would mount your fans on the inside and a radiator on the front of it there. And then, of course, these cases also have pass-through plates if you wanted to get pedestals for them, but he didn't opt for that. But this is the SM8 in gunmetal gray and burnt red with 31 millimeter vented top. There's your vent. And then, if you haven't seen it already, here is the top of the case that allows you to put up to a 480 rad in the top. Okay, so I think that's it for now. Next thing we're going to do is test some of the components and then get it into the case to take measurements for the custom cabling. So we're going to decide, probably the power supply is going to mount down here if we got a rad going in the top, I believe. But anyway, I'll take you through that when it comes time to check it out. Okay, so here we have the ASROCK Factility X99 motherboard, and it has a killer E2200 NIC on it, and also a gigabyte Ethernet NIC. And we've got 16 gigs of DDR4 2400 RAM. That's G-Skill. And then I have part of my test bench. I have this H100i that I use. And we have it's kind of cably messy because, you know, this is just for testing. We also have the EVGA GeForce GTX 980. This is the superclocked edition from EVGA with the ACX 2.0 cooler on there, and those fans will only spin when necessary. When you turn the system on, they do spin up, and then they go into a dormant mode if they're not needed, and I'm not doing anything right now. And this here is the Samsung Evo 850 1TB SSD. That's one of my DVD drives. I have Windows 8.1, which is going on the system on DVD. So, and then the other thing that I don't know if you'll be able to see, I have here the EVGA 850G2. That is the power supply going into the system, and that is powering everything up. The one thing that you see on this test bench, it's not being used right now. This is a Monsoon dual bay reservoir with a pump on it, and I have some quick disconnect. So some cases that I have to troubleshoot a water cooled system, or you know, test out a block or something, and certainly I do some fan and reservoir testings. I'll use this rig sometimes for that as well. So anyway, everything's working fine. Let me put you back on the tripod and we'll take a look through the BIOS here and show you what this looks like. Alright, so this is the ASROCK X99X Killer, the Fatality T. I think that's how you describe it. That's the name of the motherboard. Anyway, UEFI version is P1.90. The processor we have in this system is an i7-5820K, currently not overclocked, running stock at 3.3. And then the processor speed, again showing that in the cache side. And then here we see I do have the XMP profile set up, and it recognizes each of the 4GB sticks as DDR4 2400. So got all those installed and recognized just fine. And that is in the main BIOS menu. So I'll go to the overclock tweaker. So here in the tweaker you can see there's a ASROCK likes to give you some basic overclocking profiles already, so you could actually enable it. And this BIOS is nice. It has some nice features on it. So this already would has the XMP overclock setting and loading a 4 GHz profile. So you can just enable, disable it. I will overclock the system later once I get it underwater and everything. So here's some menu items here. Oh, well, we can go back up here for a second though. So here's a bunch of user profiles that you certainly can enter. So once I have certain overclock set, you can store them in there and revert to them anytime you want. Now let's look at the CPU configurations. You have all of your basic what you would expect from for an overclock, things that you would need to get into. That's the CPU config. DRAM, you can see here I have the XMP 2.0 profile set up. Currently auto is giving it 1.25 volts, and again shows you the DRAM frequency, and you can actually go in and manually set any of the timings as you would expect, again from a very well configured motherboard. Here's some more voltage and cache settings. I don't know what the FIVR configuration stands for. And then here's some more straight to the point DRAM voltage configurations, PCH voltage, CPIO,
So nice, not too crowded on each of these menus. That's pretty nice. Let's go into the advanced. You go into, here's our chipset, PCIe link speed on the motherboard, identifying which the primary display is in. And you have all your different Ethernet ports enabled, our HD audio, storage configuration. Here we see the DVD drive that I have in there, and over here we have the SSD recognized here, and you can put a RAID on this motherboard. You can configure your drives in RAID. We do have a storage drive which I don't have connected up right now, but that is not a problem to connect and check. And then this motherboard does have the capability of putting in an M2 drive on there. We don't have one for this build, but it's a really nice motherboard. I'm telling you, it's got some great features. Super I/O, got 0 port, some basic simple stuff here. Again, some USB nodes, power on, keyboard, power on, suspension kind of items. And then USB and everything is configured. Alright. Now we're going into tools. So it has an oh my god online management guard, dehumidifier function, HD. This motherboard has a capability for a little specialty cable on a port on the motherboard that you can run your hard drive to. And it will control, so from a software standpoint, it can control whether that hard drive, when it comes on, when it gets shuts off. So that is that's pretty nice for a close quarters type of system, but it's got a unique connector on it. We won't be using that. We're just going to use a regular power from the power supply to power our external hard drive, or not external, but the that storage hard drive. Easy RAID driver. There's some nice features here that this motherboard has. Looking at the manual, one of the things I did use is instant flash, and all you need to do is make sure your network configuration is set up. So this is default, and it worked just fine for me. Just dynamic host protocol for getting the IP address, and it automatically can choose what server to go to. And I absolutely had no issues at all. And then all I did was hit internet flash, and what it'll do is it'll come up and initialize the internet connection, and then it'll go up and it'll tell you if it finds a new BIOS, and then tells you what the new capabilities are of the new BIOS and whether or not you want to download it. And now I had done that already. So this one, it actually tells you you're up to date. So that's really nice. You don't have to download the BIOS onto a USB drive or anything else, and then have to reboot, point to it, and put it in the system. Although that's not difficult, this is very well implemented. I really like this. So anyway, going on to the hardware monitor. So currently with the H100, I'm running at 35 degrees C for our the CPU is at 36.5 degrees C. Yep, everything else is just monitoring, and you can configure your fans with your fantastic tuning here. We go to security, and then boot options, and we're booting off the Samsung, and obviously you can boot from the DVD if you want to. And there's other options here for priorities, so you can go and actually select where you're going to go. Fast boot. So right now it's all default set. I haven't gone in to configure anything special on here yet. And then we have the exit. So you can save changes and boot. And the system has been loaded with Windows 8.1 64-bit. And some of the updates have already been downloaded. So right now I am happy and confident that the motherboard and the system is working fine. And you can see the system booted up just fine. Time to start dismantling the graphics card, getting a water block on it.
Okay, we have the VG NGTX 980 bits power water block on here. A nice, beautiful full cover water block. Look at that, you can even see my reflection in that. And with the back plate. Alright. Next, let's put it into the system. See how she looks. There you go, look at that. Oh, that beautiful shiny chrome or nickel. Looks fantastic. Now it's time to start mounting the radiators and the reservoir with the pump. Alright, it's about time to start mounting some fans and some radiators. So what we're going to do now is the customer wants this set up in a push-pull. So we've got two Black Ice Nemesis 360 GTX radiators. One's going to be mounted in the top and one's going to be mounted in the front. And we're going to go ahead and strap those fans on there. And the airflow is going to be intake from the front. So we're going to have a 360 intake from the front, and then we're going to also have an exhaust going up and out for the top. So that's the way she's going to be. And let me go ahead and unpack these Vardars and start mounting them to the radiators, and then we'll get them in the case and I'll give you a look. I think I forgot to mention when I was showing you guys the Nemesis box that the radiators are this beautiful red, and they actually look quite sharp. So this is going to be nice sitting inside this case alongside the black and red colors that we have in there. So just wanted to give you a sneak peek before I mount the fans on there. Alright guys, so we have the fans mounted on the radiators and push-pull. We also have the reservoir mounted and just mock fit. It's not bolted down yet. And right now we're planning the loop order. Now one of the things you can't see, but I'll just show you the airflow I have planned is coming in through the front. So we got push-pull into the case and then going out, up out. And then there will be another fan, another one of the Vardars on the back. And to give it positive pressure, that'll be a fourth fan coming in. Well, actually, yeah, I mean, the seventh fan coming in and then giving it a little bit more so that we exhaust it out, we don't get any dust buildup inside the case. Now, as far as loop order, there's a lot of different options to go. I'm going to talk to the customer and see what he likes best. One of the ones I'm thinking about now is coming out of the pump, and there will be a drain valve here and a drain port right in this area here. This is a Q valve. So that'll be coming out the bottom, but we'll come out of this, go into the CPU, out of the CPU into the GPU, out of the GPU into the radiator, coming out of the radiator, going into this radiator, and then coming out of the radiator and then going back into the reservoir. So that is one. Another option is to come out here and go up into this rad in the back, and then come out and come down. So there'll be a lot more tubing crossing the front. So you know, the cleanest and shortest route is the first one that I described. And another option actually is to reverse the radiator up here. Currently this is where I have all the fittings to come in. That way it's a nice clean shot, and then there will be some tubing that you'll see come across, so that's going to look good. But it could turn it around, but then it would bunch up a lot of the activity over here, and I don't think we want that. So and then also one of the things I believe the customer wants is a drain valve. So I have a multi-valve Z-top here, and I'm going to bring up to this panel up in the top of the case here, so it'd be easy for him to fill without having to get inside the case, although it's very easy to get inside the Case Labs case and top it off. So that's where we're at right now. I'm going to communicate with the customer, and we'll see how he wants to do it. And then after that, it'll be time to start bending some tubing. Alright guys, so as you can see from the last shot, a significant amount of work has been done. Actually, it's been quite some time since I recorded anything on this build. I had a bunch of personal things going on and had to take some time off, and also there were some changes between the customer and I make some decisions on stuff, but really there were some other things that occurred that slowed things down a bit, but picked it back up, and obviously, as you can tell, the system is just about done. So what I want to do is kind of recap and take you through from where I was the last time. And the previous shot to this, we were talking about loop order. And what you can see here is the loop order that we chose was to start coming out of the pump. Oh, by the way, I did mount the reservoir and pump to the back of the chassis, the mid panel. So the previous shot was just a mock-up, but now it's been installed and leveled. And we have the coolant coming down, coming out of the pump. Out of the pump we have that Q fitting that I talked about, and we have a drain valve, so it's almost at the lowest point. Really that area there is the lowest point, but at this time anything that's in that rad would wind up staying in there without some air pressure getting it through. So that's our drain, and it's on a swivel, so I can just bring it out real easy and drain it out, which I'm going to be doing here shortly. And then we have it coming out of the pump, going into the front rad, and then coming out of the rad, and we decided to go with this multiple bend here, and that was pretty much a challenge, but got it done, and it looks really good. Going into the awesome X-Men block there, and then coming out of the block going into the GTX 980 super clocked, and then out of that it goes up and into the top rad, comes out of the top rad and returns back into the reservoir. And then also, I believe I mentioned in the beginning, the customer wanted a fill port, so we also took a fill port coming out of the top and into the bottom there. And I'll take the camera off and take you around this as well. But we have the system really all tubed up. It has not been leak checked yet. I'm going to take you through that here in a minute. And other than that, things that you'll notice, I added the custom cables. So the custom cables done by Monday Velour, and Monday did a great job, and those are the colors we chose that mix in perfectly with the X-Men, Uncanny X-Men theme. So we have that done, and then let me turn this around and I will show you the back side of the case where we have all the cabling done. Alright, so here we have the busy side of the case where all the power harnesses come through and connect to most of the items. We'll start with the Molex power. I have a Molex power harness, and by the way, all of these custom cables based on my dimensions and the color coding between myself and the customer were made by Monday Velour. He does a great job. I've used them before when I did not make the cables. And anyway, I have here the Molex connector. That's a harness that comes out, provides power to the pump, which will connect up when after I bleed and check out the system. And then we also have power to the fans. So there's fans, 6 fans coming from the front rad, and there's also 6 fans coming from the top rad. The fans coming from the front, there's a little dark side connect harness that I have here, and those power cables for the fans come through and they connect to one of the Molex cables right here. I just have it tied up out of the way. It also provides for some other fan connections and other Molex pass-throughs if you need them. But for me, it was just bringing in the 6 fans, which I have dark side connect adapters to that just bring it right out here. And then we also have the fans on the top. There's the 3 on the inside of the case that come up through this access point in the Case Labs case. And then there's another one that you can see it feeds down through here. And again, using some dark side connect, I connect up the fans to 2 points and then into the Molex connector that is connected to the main AC power harness right here. So we have that. I also had to extend the audio cable. Coming from the front of the case is really big. The motherboard is situated in the back. In order to do a nice trussing of the cable, I bought an extension cable, so that's also tied up out of the way. Then we have the SATA power. So we have a separate SATA power harness that provides power to the data drive, provides power to this SSD. And there's also this bracket can support 2 SSD. This is a 1 terabyte Samsung Evo customer has for OS and applications. And then I tied up an extra one out of the way here so he can add another drive if he wishes at that point. Other than that, we've talked about the power, the fans. There also are some LEDs that are installed on the water block. and those are also spliced using some dark side connect cables, and those are also tied up here out of the way. So that's the busy side, the power side. Now let's go back and take a complete look through the case before we get started with the next phase. Now, one of the things that you cannot see here right now, but the GPU had a black backplate that came with the bits power block, and the customer found another one he liked much better. So let's take a quick look at that. Before and after. All right, now let's take a little closer look on the case here. We did add another fan. So we have the fan here, which is an intake blowing into the case, so we have positive pressure. And then those are exhausts. We have that nice full black plate that you can see. It went from black to red. We have the fill port coming down and into the reservoir, coming down through the reservoir and out of that pump, going up into the back point on the top, the front rad, then coming out the rad, going down and into the block, out of the block with a slight wiggly bend to get into the GPU. We have the clear block in the GPU, and we have LEDs. I don't know if you can see back there. You see a wire skipping, peeking out. There's 3 LEDs in the bottom to light up that block. And then we have coming out of the block into the rad, and then in the back there coming out of that rad going back into the reservoir. That completes the loop. And this motherboard has a couple of USB 3.0 ports right there, so they come through. You got your power, EPS power, and this motherboard, in case the customer wants to add more GPUs at a later date, you know, they have that extra power connector, happen to be right in the middle of the motherboard, so we have the custom cable made for that as well. And we have our front panel connections, audio connection in the back. Those cables you see there are the power from the LED to those blocks. And everything else is nicely looped around and out the back, so that's about it. Now you can see a ton of bends, so I'm gonna, I have done a video before on how to bend tubing, but this is the new PETG tubing, and so I'm going to go ahead and show you how the tools and the process that I use to bend tubing, and hopefully you guys might find it helpful. Alright guys, so what I thought I'd do is just take a quick little detour from the build to show you the tools that I use and what you need to cut the PETG acrylic tubing. Now I buy mine from McMaster Car, and they're in New Jersey, and you can see, if you focus in on this, you'll see the you know, you can Google it, you'll find them. They have all kinds of fasteners, a lot of the stuff I use for my builds. If I can't get them for performance PCs, or it's very special to like fastening and things of that nature, I can go to McMaster Car and get them. And they sell the easy to form, they call it clear PETG tubes. This particular version is the 5/8 inch outside diameter by 1/2 inch inside diameter, or typically it's also known as 16 millimeter version, and that is this tubing right here. Okay, so a piece of it right there, and then here's the part number you can get right from McMaster Car. So you type that right in, you call it up, and you have to put in, I think by feet, how much you need. I last ordered 6 feet, and that cost about 10 bucks. So 6 feet of this tubing is roughly about $10. All right, so in order to cut and form this tubing, first of all, you know, you've probably heard about it, but this tubing is easy to form. You don't need as much heat. You do have to be careful with it though, because you can, you know, bubble it up and that, but it cuts very easy. and it's not as brittle. It's much more resilient than some of the other tubing. Here is some 12 millimeter tube, like the stuff that you use for Crystal Link. I'm not sure who made this, but this is not PETG, and it is more brittle. I don't have a hammer, but I will try to cut a piece right now. And that just basically fractured, and it did cut, but it's not a clean cut. You can see it just broke away. Now what I'm going to try to do here is cut a piece here, and I'm going to hold this in the air. So using my jigsaw, I got a nice flat cut. I was on an angle, but you can see how simple and easy it is to cut, and I was not even braced or anything. I was just holding it against the table in the air. So it just gives you an idea how easy it is to cut and work with. Now, in order to, so that's basically what I used to cut it with. I use a jigsaw with a fine tooth blade on there. So, so that's what I use. You can use a hacksaw. You can use, you know, any kind of saw that works for you, but typically a nice fine blade, tooth blade is what you're going to need. And then one thing that you can use to you know, smooth out the edges is one of these. It's like a PVC pipe reamer, but that cleans the inside, which is not such a big deal. The outside is really what you need, especially when you're going to use, you're going to be using any of the Bits Power enhanced multi-link. So here's the multi-link fittings that are in use in this system. They happen to be red. I have a sample one here that is the shining silver version, but it's the exact same thing, and it's made up of two pieces. You have this the outside compression piece that screws off, and it has a right there an O-ring on the inside that you would slide on the tube, and then there's another O-ring on the inside of here that you would insert the tube through, and so you have double O-ring protection. It is not as easy in my experience to put these together, although it is much more peace of mind for leaks, because you have double the protection of the O-rings, and it's in a compression style fitting, whereas the old Crystal Link, you just slid it in. Although I've never had any leaks if you prepare your tubing right. I haven't had any issues, and I haven't really had any issues with these either, but it's just different. And again, most people like these. There's a little more metal to them, and it's a, you know, 2 O-rings versus 1. In order to bend the material, you're going to need a heat source. What I have is a Wagner paint gun. This is, you know, to usually use in removing old paint, scraping it off of walls or wallpaper. But this guy has a couple settings. There's a low and a high heat setting, and that is my heat source. That's what I'll use. And in order to bend tubing, one of the things that you're going to need is something to fill the inside of the tube with to keep it from collapsing. When you heat this up, and in order to bend it especially, you want the tube to maintain its form so that you can get a nice smooth bend out of it. So that's why you need to insert something inside of the tubing. Now some people use a lubricant on the inside. I don't use anything. This insert, this rubber tube, came with a kit that I got from Performance PCs. It's a monsoon kit, and that monsoon kit includes some bending tools. So here's a 90-degree radius bending tool. There's a 45. There's a 180. There's all kinds of brackets and screws. You can actually mount this to a plywood board if you want, or whatever, in order to get the particular bends that you need. I tend to do most of my bends freehand, but I do like to use these to ensure a nice 90-degree bend, or a 45, or whatever I'm looking for. These I will use for the bends, but I don't mount these things up. I kind of, you know, my experience now is, for me, it's a lot easier to get the right bend, but take my measurements and then form it close to the build. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to go ahead and show you one. And one of the things that I will do is I will take a measurement and mark the center of my bend. So if I need, you know, whatever the dimension is, I tend to put one little mark where I'm going to put the bend. I don't know if you can see it here, but I placed a tiny little mark right here. That's where the center of my bend is going to be. So what I mean by that is that when I get the tube heated up, I'm going to place it on my form, This is a 90-degree one, and that little mark is going to go right in the middle, and actually I'm going to use that mark right in the middle of the bend. Okay, but otherwise, if you don't, and this is a Sharpie marker, so unless you scrub really hard, that's not going to come back out. It's just a very tiny little mark, and then it'll be on the inside of the bend, which you're not going to see anyway. So that's just what I do. You can find any other ways to mark your tubes that work for you, but before you can bend it, you need to insert the rubber forming tool to keep the pipe round there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the heat gun to a high heat. I'm going to hold it and rotate the tube around that point. And I'm going to go left and right a little bit in order to get some even heat dispersion. So you want to heat it as evenly as you can all the way around the tube, not just on the point where you're going to bend it out, because of course that will bend, but the outside has to also take a bend as well. And if you don't heat it up evenly, your bend's going to come out messed up. Okay, and so the other thing to note too is, although this is pretty resilient tubing, you don't want to heat it up too much, or what will happen is you'll get some blister marks. And actually I'll probably just go ahead and heat it up too much just to show you what it looks like, but there are some blister marks on this particular piece. So you want to be careful, nice and even, and you will see, and you should be able to see as I heat this up, you'll see it changing shape. You'll see it become a little elastic, and it might even bend if I don't hold it the same. Now the gun is kind of loud. I don't know how loud it'll be on the mic, but I'm going to go ahead and heat it up, spin it around, and then I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to put it onto the 90-degree mandrel. That's what these are called, and then bend it, and so it'll lay inside of here and I'll get my bend. All right, so let's go ahead and give it a shot. Already you should be able to see it's starting to be much more pliable right at that point already. But you still need to get it a little bit longer, and you want to go on either side of where the point you plan to bend is at. All right, I think I got it heated up enough. I'm going to take my point, put it here, and the tubing is hot. All right, so I have it in the mandrel right now, and just going to let it go. Hold it there until it cools down. You can feel that it's pretty hot, so just be careful. And some people like to wear gloves. I mean, if you don't touch the actual hot spot and you don't touch the tip of the heat gun, you're going to be fine. I don't use gloves really. But I have this tube laid completely down on the inside. You can see that it's formed there, and it's formed here. Now this stuff is like I said, is easy to form, and you can reform it. But my experience is once you have a bend in there, unless you're going for a very slight additional bend or some slight change, to heat it, reheat it, and reform it, it depends on your ability to do that and how you heat it up. It never comes out quite right. So with few exceptions, once you bend it and form it, if you have to reform it again, in my opinion, it's better just to cut another piece and do it again. But there have been times when I have done it, and it's come out fine. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and you'll see that we have a bend. All right, now if you have to make another bend, multiple bends can be tricky. Again, you're going to have to measure it and mark the point and then bend it. Because once you pull this tubing out beyond the bend, trying to get it back in there, if you had to, you know, if you have to deal with this bend again, forget it. It's going to be very, very difficult, I guess, unless you lubricate it, but I don't tend to do that. So, and I don't know what you can use. I think there's some kind of oils that you can use for that, but I don't recommend that. Try to get it right. You know, measure 3 times and cut and bend once. Now, when it comes to actually mounting it into one of these BitsPower enhanced multi-links, what you need to do here is first you need to get a nice flat smooth piece. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this nice and flat. So what I use to in order to mount them inside here, number one, you're going to have to slide this piece over and put the ring over the top of it. All right, so that's number one. You're going to need to do that. Number two, in order to get this to go inside here, obviously this needs to be flat, but the diameter on the inside of this is like right at 16 millimeters. So I'm telling you, it is a bitch to try to force this guy in there past the O-ring, and you really want it to be flat and seat. It's about another 1/4 of an inch down to the base of the enhanced fitting. So you want to slide all those in there. In order to be able to do that and get a nice seal, what I use is a Dremel with the sanding pad on it. And number one, I make sure my nice and flat. And then what I do is I round out the edges. Then I'll actually go up the sides a little bit. I'll sand. Maybe, what is that, 1/8 of an inch? Don't let the Dremel run away from you. Remember, you know, you don't want to mess up the tubing, but most of this is going to be hidden away inside of the fitting. So I have now sanded the bottom of it, and actually, yeah, that's pretty good. And so what I'll do now is, with that all sanded out, it'll actually allow me to slide nice and easily past the inner O-ring in here, and then butt up against the base of the fitting. So, and now, of course, it's a little easier when it's in my hand, and you can sand it some more if you need to. You can file it down. But once you're inside of a case and you have the one end on the block, this has to be easy to do, okay? So, it's in there nice and snug. I'm going to sand it down some more. And yes, I do this with every one of my fittings to make sure there's a nice solid fit. So now once you have it, it'll allow it to engage that O-ring well, and then you just push it into the base of the fitting. And so once it's in there, then what you do is you slide up this other O-ring, and then you screw it on. Now again, you're connecting a couple pieces inside of a case. You want that to be as smooth as possible so that it's much easier for you to engage that. But and it's probably difficult for you to see, but you can see that if you look at it in the angle that I'm looking at it, the acrylic tube hits the bottom, the base of this, and it's past that O-ring, and then you have the insurance of the compression top piece O-ring as well. So you have, you know, so to prevent any potential leaks. And it also helps to make this tubing sit and stay inside of a build much easier than a crystal link. Although again, I've never had any issues with a crystal link popping out, the original style that doesn't have this compression piece on the outside. So anyway, so hopefully that helps, guys. That is how I bend, cut, and form my acrylic tubing. And then this specific one here was the 16 millimeter, or the 5/8 inch by 1/2 inch PETG. So that's how I do it. And you can see here, it can take a number of tries, especially when you get into triple bends And it's not so bad the first two, but when you have to get this dimension right to go right into a particular place, that's the tricky part. So that is, it has nothing to do with the bending. That has everything to do with your measurements and how well you can, you know, transfer the measurements to where you are gonna actually make the bend in your tubing. That's it for quick on bending acrylic tubing, PETG from Ron's and Nut. Now let's get back to the build. Okay, we're to that point now where it's time to leak check the system. I have some towels, paper towels. There's no power to the system. I use a separate power brick to run the pump. So right now I'm just gonna start filling it with distilled water only and make sure that we have no leaks or any issues. I have to see how the fill pipe works on the fill port. The thing is I can't see in this funnel. I do have, by the way, on the top of this multi-port cap there's three entry points, and I have one removed to provide air so that the system can, you know, more easily fill and bleed. Okay, so now just looking at, okay, I caused spillage when I move the jug, but down here so far nothing, no issues here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and plug this in and get the pump wet. All right, this fitting up here, so far we're looking dry. Nothing down by the Q. All right, let's keep going. All right, we're just getting through that first rad. Well, nothing here so far. Let's see. Oh, we do have some leakage, and it's coming out of this guy here, out of this bend. Okay, we've got the system running now with no leaks. There was one leak coming out of this fitting right here. This tube had to take a really weird bend to get it to go 90 and it almost a little 45, and so that was where the leak was. But I got that one fixed up and back in, and now she's running. There's a lot of air in the system, so that is going to take a while to bleed out. But what I'm going to do right now is fill it with the yellow coolant, and let's see what it looks like. That's going to look pretty damn cool. Let's give it a shot. Alright, for this system the customer has selected the Mayhem's Pastel Ice White, and we're going to use some Mayhem's yellow dye. This is a new non-stain yellow dye from Mayhem's, but we are going to load this system up for testing with the color that he's chosen, and we'll see how that does. Now the system already has some distilled water still left in it, but that should not be a problem. And then I'll put the yellow dye in. There comes the die. Kind of a lemonade color right now. There we go. Just needs a little bit more help. You can see that the yellow in the reservoir is pretty bright yellow, and everything else actually is getting nice and yellow there too, and actually just about matches that X-Men yellow. It kind of looks green in the camera, but it is a good banana yellow here right now. So looking good, looking real good. Awesome. Here's a cleaner shot without all the towels. Everything's running nicely. And there's a shot with the side panel on, the door, window door. So you can see everything nicely. Looking good. Alright guys, so we have the Uncanny X-Men system done. Yes, and we have a specialty logo, X-Men First Class, that matches with the theme of the system. And what I'm going to do now is take you for a final quick look around the system. I did run some benchmarks and I'll post them up here. I was able to get the 5820 processor overclocked on this nice ASROCK Fatality motherboard to a 24/7 overclock at 4.2, and it's up from the stock 3.3. So I have some benchmarks to show you the difference in some of the results for that. And also I overclocked the 980. It's super clocked already, but I took the boost clock up to 1500, so it was at 1300. So now it's for a good 24/7. Ran Firestrike, and I'll show you some of those benchmarks as well. So anyway, I'll post those up here now. You can take a quick look at them. And here we have the results of the 3D Mark Firestrike. The score number 1 is the processor at stock and the GPU boost clock at stock. And then score number 2 is the Firestrike results with both the boost clock at 1500 and the processor overclock at 4.2. So basically about 1100 point gain by overclocking both the CPU and the GPU. Now we have the Cinebench results, and this is strictly the CPU at stock. So you can see a 1020 score. And with the processor overclocked at 4.2, we have basically a 200 point increase with the Cinebench results. The Cinebench OpenGL test results on the GPU at stock. And with the GPU boost clock
overclocked, we get about 20 frames more per second on the Cinebench test results. And then something new that I decided to try was running the ADA 64 CPU and GPU benchmarks. So here is the results of the stock ADA 64 GPU CPU benchmarks with both the CPU stock and the GPU boost clock at stock. And here is the same benchmark test results through ADA 64 for the overclock processor at 4.2 and the GPU boost clock up at 1500. So you can see in most every category a significant increase in the results. And we have all the charcoal gray with the red panel. You can see the red and the yellow through the vents at the top there. You've already seen this side, but one last look. All the cabling and storage. And one of the things that the customer wanted on the back was some LEDs so that he could see his I/O down behind his desk. And that is a LED that's got USB powered. It has a switch right here, and I have it connected and hidden underneath the handle in the back of the system, so you're not going to be pulling out that tray until you're servicing this unit. So it's a great place to hide the cable. I can turn it off, and actually when the system is off, that USB port it's plugged into is powered, so there will be a light there. And I'll go ahead and turn off my lights here so you can see it better. And there it is in a room completely dark with lighting. There is a dark side connect white LED strip mounted in the top of the case, shining down. And then of course the block puts off beautiful light as well. And we have some red highlights on the GPU block. And then around back we have the LEDs, so you can see what's going on your I/O panel if you need to get to it. So there it is, guys. That's it for this build log. It did take a little while, but sometimes quality takes time. And I hope you did like this build log. If you did, please like and favorite. And if you're so inclined, please subscribe. That's it from Ron's a Nut for the build log of the Uncanny X-Men system. Thanks for watching.